Arrogant, greedy, and able only to destroy, I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of Little Red Riding Hood. Oh. So you're telling me the first 10 minutes of it, 10 minutes in with the recording, it's a prologue. This is chapter 1 thus far. I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, that's fascinating, isn't it? We're off to a great start, for the most part. It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen watercolor gray. I know, rain is pretty depressing for some people. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit, a rather unforgiving temperature for November. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, pathetically reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. But lazy mornings like today's were, for her, a blessing. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, tardiness would be unavoidable, but today, classes were canceled in commemoration of the school's anniversary. Oh, hey, that means you can sleep in. That's something else. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. Outside the window was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. I guess that's that, I suppose. Morning. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination, but having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of no concern to her. She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to let sleep reclaim her.
せめてあと2時間ぐらいは凡庸な夢を見ていられますように。
Oh, I thought it was going to be like a thank you at the end. Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, oh, don't you love it when someone tries to call you while in the middle of your slumber? Lovely. Her simple request would be mercilessly refused. A faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Yeah, it ain't no alarm clock, but a fucking phone. Okay, well, it's obvious this is the main girl's favorite hobby right here. You can tell that with the music, that is obviously with the guitars and whatnot. Much to her chagrin, her eyes popped open out of habit.
こんな日に限って。
The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Imagine having to walk downstairs just to get to the phone. Answering it meant walking down a 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, that distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the collar would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge.
アリス出ないの？
That's a good question. Why wouldn't someone answer the phone for you? She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. Abandon all hope. The realization struck that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at her prestigious little hilltop academy. Oh, lovely. The caller proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder.
もうせっかくの安眠を。
She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room.
うわ、寒。
Damn. I mean, it's 43 degrees Fahrenheit, so. She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate, to say the least. Well, it's a mansion. That's not surprising. Which meant that winter was the very worst of uninvited guests. Never more so than on a dreary morning as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by dense forest. Winter always arrived here first before moving on to nearby towns. The robotic ring at the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel unlived. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with the dreary morning, it could have passed for a haunted house.
ま、幽霊屋敷そのものだけど。だいたい2人で住むには広すぎるのよ、この家は。
She counted more than 30 rings since it first began. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out onto a gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had her feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale. I don't know what... That's... Okay. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale. Or whether it be objectively true or merely supposition, it is always from gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set into motion. Oh. I guess intro as is. Lovely. Oh yeah. Intro title for this. That is definitely a pretty long ass walk, though, if you ask me. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Sunlight seemed to be playing peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon.
と言っても、私には関係のない話だけど。
The weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house at such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed inside. She didn't encounter any other students along the way. Nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The reception desk to the faculty room simply read faculty closed. The school had given all of its students the day off, except those explicitly summoned like her. Damn. Everyone gets the day off, but the main character doesn't. That's something. A fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. She opened the door to the faculty room and headed towards the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim-framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered image this mid-20s man presented clashed with the cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet.
Yamashiro-sensei.
She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head. I thought it was Yamashiro.
やあ、おはよう、青崎くん。要件は聞いているかな？
I suppose so.
はい。1時間前に自宅で、事前に何の相談もなく。
Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. Yeah, because I bet the other teachers suck. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She was of the opinion that teachers should come across as more austere, like an iron fist that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure, not a buddy to joke and pal around with. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd ever been wired to make friendly small talk.
はあ、今日もご機嫌斜めみたいだね、君は。
Gee, I wonder why.
それは先生の気のせいです。今日だけ特別という話ではありませんから。
The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood from having to get up early and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversarial.
そうならいいんだけどね。彼にはそう辛く当たらないでくれよ。僕らじゃ正直どう扱っていいかわからないところもあるし。
先生、その件ですけど、私まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
As Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, He finally understood the reason behind her tone and slowly put out his cigarette.
電話じゃあなんて聞いたの？
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
One of Mr. Yamashira's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. He could see that she was angry, not because she had been called to school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生、これが笑い話ならそろそろ帰っていいでしょうか。
I'm pretty sure there's gotta be more to this than just like calling up in the middle of the day off and just wasting our time. Try to walk over here and be like, oh, this is for minimal reasons.
いや、ごめん。謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。ちょっと君の手を借りたくてね。
本当に転入生の問題で？
訳ありというか難しいというか。彼宗十郎くんと言うんだけど、ちょっといろいろとずれていてね。僕らが案内してあげるより同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be teaching duties on her, but she did wonder how exactly this transfer student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had behavioral problems or was difficult somehow. The difficulty of grievances to put up with. But peculiar? She didn't have the slightest idea what that meant, and this is vague.
ずれてるなんてそう使わない表現だけど。
She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar, quote-unquote, she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home.
一つ質問があります。
何？あ、学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。青崎くんとはクラスは違うけど、きっと仲良くな。
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし、測ります。
Well,
そうではなく、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
though her tone was still stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She had decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something she was used to. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. To a point. At times, that strength shattered expectation, and on those occasions they were left with no choice but to treat it like a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her as over the past year.
もう一度だけ聞きます、山城先生。それで、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Why her out of all people? Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered.
それはね。別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていて、学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長 だからじゃないよ。
Iron-fisted ruler. I don't even know if it's hyperbole.
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities. Well,
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。適任ですからと強く推薦したわけ。
in other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。言ったろ、僕にはともかく彼には笑顔でって。
No, you woke her up in the middle of a fucking day off.
とまあ納得してくれたならすぐに移動しよう。もうずいぶん待たせてしまっているからね。
Oh, great.
それと雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out of the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. While he did, the rain shower would lighten into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best-behaved student might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. Scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. What, you're used to that? He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in this cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of the rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it barely. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain to this day. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That trivial detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather, but he liked rain in its own way. I guess people have their own preferences in terms of weather. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of the soil, and it reminded him of home. It was at times like these that he was able to numb the anxiety the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks, and thoughts of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. As if having a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of the rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. A strong point of his or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out in this moment. She, on the other hand, was livid. The profile of the transfer student had been explained to her on her way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. Damn. That dude be really touching grass. That meant more than half of civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him.
なんて絶望的な断絶。戦後どころか戦前の話じゃない。ロビンソンにも程がある。
She had every she had every right to be angry. This village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Although expressways and Japan Rail, the old national railways, now spanned the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely possible for mountain villages like his to exist. But she couldn't imagine how someone born into such circumstances would think or live.
電気がないって村に行き渡っていないだけで公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになってまず驚いたのが電話だそうだし。
It's like he's surprised that technology has been advancing like more and more to this day.
電話って便利ですね。なんて真顔で言われてね。そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
She shot a sidelong glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the naivety of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a bit.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど。そいつ学校も知らないんですか？
Yeah, I know of Japan and weird teachers. Ain't this something? It's still chapter 1 and this is even that is fucking awkward.
うん。どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。
Okay. Sorry.
ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。あ、いや、探検隊の話だね。
Feral? Are you actually describing the transfer student there? That was shown within the appearance in the scene?
怖いな、青崎くん。冗談だって。そう睨まないでくれ。大丈夫。話してみた感じ、おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、 言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ？
That's one way to describe with the metaphor.
山城先生、その例え気休めになってませんから。
Okay. As she gave her blunt reply, she tried to simulate in her mind what life without electricity would be like. But the thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She could understand why the teachers had given up. She too wanted to give up and return to her warm bed, but her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Not only did the teachers believe she was up to the task, but she also believed she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word, no matter how bad things looked after the fact. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Unknown stranger. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。なんていうか、優しくね。できれば笑顔とか作れないかな。
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
Imagine taking your job too seriously.
ああ、そうなんだ。それはよかった。いやー、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
Mr. Yamashira's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ、愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び丸の方が向いてるって。
She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. I guess that's another word for insulting others' intelligence. It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them, at the very least. They could have used their brains and organized all this on a normal school day, another complaint she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。
Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't really make any sense. I don't understand why this would occur this way, but that's the prequel, how it goes.
間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
Her pounding headache from a lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disturbed her sleep was the enemy. Oh yeah, because you're trying to sleep in. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. Her room slowly slid into view. She didn't care for formalities, just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room and found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. Oh boy. This is where we're already 48 minutes in on this one. Lovely. Before we go on, let's see from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little. You don't have to do anything. For some, these words are a priceless luxury. For others, they are unbearable torture. For the proactive girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept it. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that made him homesick, though at this very moment his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal any discontent. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the gray sky. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. And as long as he had the sound of the rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろ
He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. The mood felt as damp as the air. It was then he heard the heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
よかった。忘れられているかと思った。
He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open. Okay, well, at least it's not one-sided on most cases, when it comes to perspectives, that is.
すまないね。随分とお待たせしちゃって。
Oh boy, I don't know how this conversation will go. The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me here.
ってあれ里中先生いないんですかひどいなあ話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに
Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic. And then from behind him, oh boy. With a tight-lipped expression that made it clear she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. Sojiro gulped. I mean, I'm hoping that's the right way to pronounce his name. The sound of the rain on the window faded into nothingness. That's when he knew this was how it felt when time stood still. Well, she blinked quickly a few times as if taken aback. Why was anyone's guess the boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like? However, she felt something she couldn't understand. Well, he ain't no generic dude, because according to her eyes. His eyes widened slightly as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feeling into words was a different matter altogether. so we will never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. That's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の静木宗十郎くん。で、こっちの彼女が静木くんの案内役。
God.
うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Uh-oh. His voice and the sound of the rain seemed distant. This is how they first met. Such was their start, for better or worse, like the ethereal beauty of fireworks. It was commonly believed among the students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have time to be irritated 24/7. The reality was she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore seemed angry about something, obvious or not. This idle gossip did, however, lead to her earning the title of one of the school's 7 deadly threats. What? I mean, I know about the 7 deadly sins, but I didn't know this. I didn't know Witch of the Holy Night mentioned the parody called the 7 deadly threats. That's new to me. The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had the feeling that her tendency to feel animosity toward other harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. For today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash in the colors of the rain. To reduce electricity costs, school regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. Her first impression was that his calm demeanor reminded her of a field of wildflowers. In spite of his perfect posture, his overall air felt placid, tame even. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. His dark hair was unkempt, and he came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was that the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she was left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider, who were the guests here. Oh. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation building within her, almost as if her right to be here wasn't questioned. Aoko felt herself raising her natural defenses.
信じられない。私、今わけもなく怒ってない。
Obviously. She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged her like a thorn in her side. In her side.
いやーほら青崎くん挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
Mr. Yamashira's attempt to relieve the tension was equally irritating. Wow. What is this? Oh, never mind. Equally irritating.
挨拶？
After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aoko turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the culmination of her emotional state hurtled toward the hurtled her toward the innocent boy and skewered him.
いや待たせたねしずきくん。
Hearing his name, Sojiro came to his senses. His stunned since I got a little distracted there, his stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking it up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くん。で、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Great. Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare, an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Sojiro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure despite the shock at how confrontational she appeared. Yeah. It's insane seeing that Takeuchi actually drew at one point. Well, keep in mind, this visual novel is like, what, a decade and a half ago? I'd say the actual release of this visual novel is like 2012, something like that on the line. But yeah, it's crazy. What a crazy past we're seeing through, ain't it? He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed mistakenly that this was how people treated each other in the city. The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. A girl ready to brawl. Oh. Takeuchi only traces over his own art. It's funny. Yeah, I know. I mean, according to the stuff what happened in the Fate Grand Order and whatnot, it can be amusing. A girl ready to brawl. This is going pretty overboard, isn't it? An earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for an example. While he had thought he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in an inexplicably bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. Wait, you mean to tell me that there's no honor students in the school? Out of all the honor students in the school, you only chose Aozaki? Or you mean to tell me that she's the only honor student that you have to rely on? What's going on? It was this moment that he realized his failure. Oh God. His realization had come far too late. One false move, and this girl, for whom no problem was too large, would becoming a storm that could rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued. The scandal.
イケてる。二人とも気は合うようだね。
I don't know. It feels like 10 minutes of a stare down, if you ask me.
それじゃあ、僕はこの辺でいいかな。
Mr. Yamashiro laughed nervously as he crept toward the door. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna leave you two alone. If you need me, I'm just gonna be in the next room.
僕は職員室にいるから、終わったら来るように。
Oh my god, I knew it!
いいかい、青崎くん。くれぐれも、くれぐれもだぜ。
I knew he's gonna leave like that. He's not gonna be the peacekeeper here.
なんていうか、生徒会長としての度量の広さを、この際僕に信じさせてほしいかな。
Mr. Yamashiro left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed state, one in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was an artless boy and a cross-armed, guarded girl. Artless boy? I mean, my question with the boy is why does he have a bandaged neck? The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over their first moves, though it was only Aoko who was reading so much into the situation. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojiro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。それで、あなた名前は？
But didn't the teacher already introduce her? Whatever. Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、静木宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
For whatever reason, he came across as happy in his response.
さあはいいわ。柄じゃないから。
Would using the word senpai work? I don't know.
こっちは静木くんでいい？
What the fuck?
いいって何が？
だから呼び方。くんづけでいいかって聞いてるの。何よ。おかしなこと言った？私。
いや、すごく。
The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed himself.
いや、いいんだ。ごく一般的なんだろう。静木くんで頼む。君は青崎でいいんだよな。
よろしく。
She's like, if you say so. She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. Again, she's like, fuck this, I'm out. While she was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her, and it was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど、優しくしてあげる気はないから。 時間も惜しいし、手早く行くわよ。
Oh, okay.
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Aoko's blunt rancor was lost on him once again. Yeah. Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form that takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Aoko did her best to act professional and directed her guest into the hallway. I ain't gonna lie though, like, it's hard to take her seriously when she makes facial expressions like that, honestly. There was no sunlight in the hallway, nor any sign of life. This was more like a This was more like a prison than the cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Aoko that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんてちょっと想像できないけど。
そう、よかったわね。
Oh, ain't that lovely? It's just what a way to respond. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'll be right back. I gotta go for a coffee break.